The LA Kings have re-signed a player. Mitch Marner is heading out west, but not to LA. That and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly podcast that recaps the week in the NHL. Now in our 19th year of doing the show, it's one of the longest running hockey podcasts out there. And I'm a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can bet $150 or can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Coming up in today's show, we're going to tell you about what some of the experts had to say about the grades the LA Kings get from their draft class for 2025. Plus, I was out at Kings Development Camp earlier on Monday. I'll tell you what I saw. But we start with the free agency period in the NHL opening up on Tuesday, 9 a.m. LA time. But a lot of news in the NHL came down on Monday, directly and indirectly affecting the LA Kings. We'll start with Ken Holland's first signing of a player from the Kings roster from last season, and that is unrestricted free agent forward Andrei Kuzmenko. He re-signed to a one-year contract extension worth $4.3 million for the 2025-26 season. I love the deal. It is a price that is reasonable, just 1 year, so it's a prove-it deal for Kuzmenko. Yes, he looked great in a limited time with the Kings, but it was a small sample size. This way, the Kings get a player that appeared to be a great fit, but they're not investing in him long-term. If it turns out that he just got hot for a little while and really isn't the player that we saw over that short amount of time, then the Kings are out. They part ways after one season. For Kuzmenko, he gets a chance to prove to the LA Kings that he is that player. And if he is, then he can re-sign next year for even more money and more term. He'll be highly motivated to play well again this season. So again, I think it's a win-win for both sides. I love it. 1 year deal for Andrei Kuzmenko, $4.3 million. So good on Ken Holland for getting this done, I think, at pretty much the exact right price and term. Kuzmenko's 29, so he's not young. Came over late from Russia to join the NHL. 22 regular season games for the Kings after coming over at the deadline from Philadelphia. 5 goals, 12 assists for 17 points. He added 3 goals and 3 assists for 6 points in 6 playoff games. In his career, he has 219 NHL games under his belt. He has got 72 goals and 85 assists, 157 points in 219 career games. Of his 72 goals, 26 of them are power play goals. 12 of them are game-winning goals. He's a right shot, right winger, exactly what the Kings needed from last year to help out with the power play. So again, Andrei Kuzmenko, he is now going to be a part of the LA Kings for at least next season. Now, does this signing of Kuzmenko mean the Kings are no longer looking to add a top-notch forward? I would say no. I think Kuzmenko is a nice insurance policy should the Kings not be able to get in on a Brock Besser, for example. And certainly defense going forward, which we're going to talk a lot about in just a moment, is the priority. But I don't think that the Kuzmenko signing means the Kings aren't still looking to add another forward. The priority is defense. But like I said, I don't believe that Kuzmenko means that the Kings will not look to add a top 6, top 9 forward. Now, there is no update on Vladislav Gavrikov, unfortunately, other than the clock is ticking, and it certainly appears that what we've all suspected was going to be the case, that Vladislav Gavrikov is going to test free agency. So we'll see what happens tomorrow when it comes to Gavrikov. We do know that Mitch Marner is not coming to LA. The biggest name that was going to be available in free agency ended up getting signed and traded to the Vegas Golden Knights. He gets an 8-year deal worth $96 million, $12 million per year. Ken Holland and the Kings were supposed to fly out to meet Mitch Marner in Ontario. Once they found out the rumors about this deal with Vegas, they put the trip on hold, and now obviously it's been canceled because what's the point? Personally, I'm not too disappointed by this. I've said all along, I love the idea of Mitch Marner, but not necessarily in love with the player himself. Translation, as you guys probably have heard me say a few times, I want the Kings to be in on all the top free agents available. I want LA to be a destination for big time free agents. And by all accounts, the Kings were in on Mitch Marner. Obviously, the meeting was scheduled face to face, and Marner apparently had the Kings on his list. So at least they were in the running. That's, I think, encouraging news. But for Mitch Marner, to me, look, he's a very talented guy, and I certainly understand why teams were looking to get him. But I've said all along, if you're going to pay a guy that much money, I think he needs to be a proven difference maker in big games, in playoff games. And Mitch Marner has never shown he's that guy. Maybe he goes to Vegas and he turns into that guy. And if he does, good for Vegas and good for him. But he has not proven that so far. So, look, if Mitch Marner would have come to LA, there would have been a part of me that would have been excited about it. And it would have been big news for the show, and it would have gotten a lot of fans excited. Some not so much, but some. It was certainly the Mitch Marner idea of him being in LA, being an LA King. I think there were a lot of fans that were divided on this. There were certainly a lot of fans that thought it would be amazing and really wanted it to happen. And there were a certain group of fans who didn't want this to happen. So there's certainly disappointment for some fans. There's certainly relief maybe for other fans. But again, Mitch Marner will not be coming to LA. Unfortunately, he will be a division rival of the Los Angeles Kings with the Vegas Golden Knights. We talked about Vladislav Gavrikov. Again, it appears that he is going to test free agency. There's a lot of smoke around him joining the New York Rangers. We shall see. One player that I thought was a pretty big possibility as being a replacement for Vladislav Gavrikov is no longer available. That was Columbus Blue Jackets defenseman Ivan Provorov. He ends up re-signing with Columbus, 7-year deal, $8.5 million per season. I think that's a pretty decent indication of the ballpark that Gavrikov is looking for. I think he's going to get a little bit more than Provorov. I could see Gavrikov getting a 7-year, $9.5 million deal. Have the LA Kings made an offer close to that? Will they make an offer close to that if it's a bidding war between the New York Rangers for Gavrikov? We shall see. But I think 7 years, around $9 million, 9.5. I think that's what Gavrikov is probably looking for. Will the Kings ultimately offer that? We shall see. But again, Ivan Provorov, I thought would have been a decent replacement for Gavrikov in free agency. That is a pretty steep price for him, but it's obviously not an option for LA anymore. Gavrikov, a little bit better defensively than Provorov. Provorov, a little bit better offensively. But similar, Provorov was playing on the second pairing for Columbus, or is playing on the second pairing for Columbus. Number one power penalty kill unit as well, just like Gavrikov. So we'll see. We'll see if the term is something that's close to what Gavrikov is looking for. I got to believe it is. So we'll see who gives it to him and how much it's going to be coming up in the next week, you would think. There were multiple reports that Ken Holland took a run at Calgary Flames defenseman Rasmus Andersson over the weekend. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent after this season. He's 28 years old. He's a top pairing defenseman, a right shot, played on the right side in Calgary. Doesn't seem to be a natural replacement for Gavrikov on the left side, but I guess it doesn't matter at this point because the deal fell through and the Kings and Flames, we'll see if they decide to revisit things or not. But apparently Ken Holland went hard after Rasmus Andersson of the Calgary Flames, but it did not work out over the weekend. Some other potential replacements in free agency for Gavrikov. I like a guy like Nate Schmidt, just won a Stanley Cup with the Florida Panthers. He would be my choice over some other guys like Dmitry Orlov of the Hurricanes or Ryan Lindgren of the Avalanche. We've also talked about the Kings possibly looking at a trade for a restricted free agent like the Sabres' Bowen Byram or the Rangers' Keandre Miller. On one other signing of note involving defensemen, the Edmonton Oilers did re-sign defenseman Evan Bouchard, 4 years, $10.5 million per season. So Bouchard re-upping with the Edmonton Oilers. Also, the Florida Panthers defenseman Aaron Ekblad was seen as the number one defenseman available He signed an 8-year deal to stay with the Panthers, $6.1 million per season. So he takes less money to get longer term with the Florida Panthers. So he obviously wanted to stay there, gave him a bit of a discount. Yes, it's for 8 years, but $6.1 million. I really think he could have gotten more than that on the open market, but wanted to stay in Florida. And Brad Marchand re-signing with the Panthers as well. So a lot of big names will not be going to market on Tuesday in free agency. But there are a couple of big names still left. Nikolai Ehlers is still out there. And I think for the LA Kings, Brock Besser is still out there. I've said all along he would be my target if I was the LA Kings. Maybe that changes with Kuzmenko being signed. I don't think so. I think he's still an option, but he's not the priority. Probably at this point, it is what are the Kings going to do defensively to fill those holes with, it looks like, Vladislav Gavrikov leaving, and of course, Jordan Spence gone as well, the trade made on day 2 at the NHL draft. All right, what grade are people giving the LA Kings 2025 draft class? We will get into that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. FanDuel tracks your favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch games. Whether it's a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the 9th inning, FanDuel makes it feel like you're part of the action. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, the NHL draft obviously in the books, and we have NHL draft grades to tell you about. Now, the real grading will be done in about 5 years when we actually see what these players turn into. But it's fun to speculate, so we'll look at the grades now for what it's worth. And we did check out several draft analysts to see what grade they gave the LA Kings for this year's draft. And much like my report cards growing up, no A's, but a lot of B's. We'll start with Steve Ellis of the Daily Faceoff. He gave the Kings a B+ for their 2025 draft class. He said, I didn't love the Henry Bustevich pick at 31, but the Kings needed a blue liner. From there, I thought that Jarret was a fine pick in the second round, and Christian Epperson could be a nice reentry player at 88. Jimmy Lombardi deserves some more love, and I love Petteri Rempanen's game ever since the World Juniors. They could have a few hidden gems here, but I won't give them an A because I'm not sold on anyone becoming a big impact player. And that was what Steve Ellis had to say about the LA Kings draft class, giving them a B+. Chris Peters of Flow Hockey also gave the Kings a B+. He said the Kings traded back in the first round, and I think they made the most of their opportunities. They got a solid puck-moving defenseman in Henry Bustevich out of the vaunted London Knights program, landed a top 50 player from my list at number 59 in Wojtek Jr. Highly productive Christian Epperson at number 88, and one of my favorite goalies in the draft, World Junior standout Petteri Rempanen at 152. I also really liked USHL speedster Brendan McMurrow at 196. The Kings had 9 picks, and I think they did a tremendous job building out depth and adding some pieces. That was Chris Peters from Flow Hockey, who gave the Kings a B+ grade for the 2025 draft. It's a theme. Kyle Cushman of The Score also gave the Kings a B+. He said about the Kings 2025 draft class, Henry Bustevich is a breakout candidate who will shoulder much more responsibility on the London Knights next season. There's a lot to like with his 6'2 frame and two-way effectiveness. Shiar is a sneaky ad after playing a full campaign in the Czech Pro League and could become a top 9 complimentary winger. Epperson is one of the top re-entry players after a huge OHL campaign, and he's headed to the University of Denver. Rempanен started for Finland at the World Juniors and is an athletic but undersized netminder. That's Kyle Cushman from The Score, who gave the Kings a B+ grade. ESPN's Rachel Dory gave the Kings a B. She said about the Kings 2025 draft class, quote, the Kings had a fine draft, nothing to be overly excited about and nothing to be disappointed with either. They got some value with Jimmy Lombardi, who has a projected NHL play driving ability and skill. He has speed, or I should say, if his speed improves, he could really pop. Petteri Reppinen was another value-added pick in the late rounds and worth the swing based on his development curve. Christian Epperson provided value in the third round as an overager and should fit nicely in a third-line role when he's ready. Henry Bustevich was a fine pick, but the Kings took him a little early considering some of the other valuable defensemen on the board at number 31. They're betting he has development. They're betting that his development skyrockets in London, which they'll need if he's going to provide value in a second pair role. Wojtek Szczera was a bit rich for me in the second round, but because he lacks upside, but I don't doubt he'll be an NHL contributor in the bottom six. And that was Rachel Dory from ESPN, who gave the Kings 2025 draft class a B grade. Corey Pronman of The Athletic gave the Kings a B minus. He said, quote, the Kings did some draft maneuvering to get more capital. In doing so, they added more depth to their system than I expected them to. Henry Bustevich is a good chance, or has a good chance, to be a regular NHL defenseman. Wojtek Szczera has a likable style of play given his average size. I'm not sold on what his ultimate NHL role would be. Christian Epperson's talent is intriguing enough for him to have a shot at making it. Caden Harrington tries too much to score and isn't trustworthy in his own end. If he cleans that up, he could play in the NHL. Jimmy Lombardi's pure hockey sense isn't that good. He competes well enough, though. Petteri Reppinen has a chance due to his talent, but it's questionable whether he's that special a talent to make up for his size. Jan Hoven, if you told me he became a legit middle six forward in 5 years, I wouldn't be shocked, but it's hard to bet on a guy who can't score consistently in a middling league. And that was what Corey Pronman of The Athletic had to say about the LA Kings draft class as he gave them a B minus. Also, Adam Herman from the Bleacher Report gave the Kings a B minus as well. He says Henry Bustevich would not have been my pick at 27th overall. I gotta correct you there, Adam. He wasn't the Kings pick at 27 overall either. He was the 31st overall pick by the LA Kings. We move on. He says, but I think the Kings can credibly defend the selection. The right-handed defenseman is an offensive zone creator, and in particular, finds seams to the middle of the ice to thread passes to teammates at scoring positions. He's okay as a defensive player, and he's already very strong. I'm not sure he'll be the first option for offensive situations and power plays on a good team. I do wonder if that means the likeliest NHL role for him is an 18-minute defenseman feasting against the team's bottom six. I would not have taken winger Wojtek Szczera anywhere near round 2, but overage winger Christian Epperson's exploded offensively this season and has the brains and brawn to find his way into an NHL bottom six. Fourth rounder Jimmy Lombardi, as a center, has good hands and could make his way to the NHL if he can become faster and stronger. Some other picks were strange, but I think Los Angeles gave themselves a good chance at an NHLer in Bustevich and should be able to pull one or two more depth players out of the rest of the pile. And that was from Adam Herman of the Bleacher Report. He gave the Kings a B minus grade for the 2025 draft class. So there you have it. All in all, most draft analysts seem to feel the Kings didn't have a spectacular 2025 NHL draft class, but better than average. I would say good to very good was the sentiment from all of those draft experts. And frankly, when you're not picking in the top 10, if you can get a B plus grade or a B grade, that's doing pretty good. That's doing pretty good. It wasn't like the Kings were picking from an area of strength because obviously they were a playoff team a year ago. So look, I'm not qualified to be able to give the Kings a grade. I don't know these players well enough, haven't watched them enough to be able to really give them some sort of a fair evaluation. So I won't do so. I'll rely on others. But I think those comments, all in all, give us a pretty good idea of this draft class. And it seems like it was, it would be surprised if any of these guys turned into any kind of a superstar, but some pretty solid players could come out of this 2025 draft. And I said, I believe Henry Bustevich is going to have a big jump again in London next year. It's the way they do things in that organization, how they bring players along. He had a lesser role his first year. Next year, a bigger role. His numbers jumped. And then this coming year, he's going to be one of their top players defensively, more responsibility. I think we'll see more numbers from him. I think people will look a little bit differently at that pick after this coming season. So we shall see. That's the fun of these players developing and see where it goes from here. Speaking of the Kings draft picks and young prospects, they were all in El Segundo for the opening of development camp. I was there as well for most of it. We'll tell you what I saw next on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. All right, as I mentioned, the Kings' top prospects on display at the Kings annual development camp, opening up at the Toyota Sports Performance Center in El Segundo. And if you maybe don't know what development camp is, it's a summer program that all NHL teams put together. It's something that's been around maybe for 10, 15 years. It's not something that's always been a part of the NHL, but right after the draft, all the young players and the new draft picks will get together with their new teams and basically just kind of put through drills. They, are educated on what it takes to be a pro. They talk about all kinds of things. There's, off-season training, nutrition, all that kind of stuff. It's just, get your feet wet, come together with the other young players in the organization, kind of get to know one another, and, just kind of welcomed into the organization. As I said, off ice training, you also are meeting some of the coaching staff of your new team. If you're a player that's just been drafted, and again, just kind of telling you what's expected, some things that you need to do going forward to hopefully eventually be a contributor for the LA Kings. So I was out there this morning to see both the forward and defensive groups and the goaltenders go through their workouts. I unfortunately could not stay for the scrimmage. Couldn't devote that kind of time to it, unfortunately. So I didn't get to see these guys in game action. I will be back out there on Thursday for the final scrimmage and hopefully also get a chance to talk to some of these players as well. But as far as the opening day of development camp, it started with all the forwards taking the ice, including last year's first-round pick, Liam Greentree. However, he was in full uniform and he went through the skating drills, but he didn't participate in any of the stick handling or shooting drills because he had off-season surgery on his left wrist. So he is expected to make a full recovery. He is expected to be 100% ready to go for the start of next season. And I was kind of under the impression that he was going to be there, but he wasn't going to really participate. So I thought it was actually pretty cool for him to be out there in uniform, to do the skating with his teammates, be out there participating, being a part of things. It would have been easy for him to say, hey, I'm not participating. I'm just going to, sit on the bench or, whatever. But I seriously doubt they required him to be out there. I think it was something that he wanted to do. So good on him for being out there with his teammates, even though he couldn't fully participate in the action. So Liam Greentree coming back from wrist surgery should be ready to go, though, for the start of next season. The Kings' first forward selected in this year's draft, Wojtek Šiar, from Czechia, was on the ice. I did pay particular attention to him since Liam Greentree wasn't taking part. So I focused on him, and I would say he's got some nice mitts. He's got soft hands. He's got a quick release on his shot. Pretty good shot. So I thought that Wojtek Šiar, that was what stood out to me, was a decent skater. And again, this is just in drills, not in game action, but thought he had some pretty soft hands and a really nice little wrist shot. Also out on the ice was Jack Hughes. Now, you might remember that he was the Kings' first selection, second-round pick in 2022. And there was a lot of talk, and it looked like he was not in the future plans of the LA Kings. And even I had talked about when reviewing his draft class, that was a huge miss for the Kings. You pick a guy, even though he wasn't a first-round pick, but the first pick of a draft class in the second round, and they never signed him to an entry-level contract. He will never play a game in the Kings organization. Well, things have changed apparently. And I believe I read that Jack Hughes is signed to an AHL contract and that it's anticipated that the Kings are going to sign him to a 3-year entry-level contract. So there's been a change of heart with him, and he is going to play for the Ontario Reign next season. I don't know if this is specifically because Ken Holland is now the general manager. If that played a direct, played a direct role in the change of heart with Jack Hughes, but looks like the former player from Boston University, the son of Montreal Canadiens GM Kent Hughes, is going to get a chance to continue his hockey career and to be a professional. Certainly has a long road ahead of him. Because certainly going to have to prove it in the AHL, but hey, he's got an opportunity when it didn't look like he was going to get that opportunity. So good for Jack Hughes. Hopefully he can take advantage of this opportunity and be a success story for the LA Kings. Also on the ice was Grant Slukinsky. He is the older brother of Kings goalie prospect Hampton Slukinsky. Grant, along with his younger brother, won a national championship this year at Western Michigan University. And Grant is a camp invitee as a non-drafted player. He's 23 years old, so he's certainly older. He is going back to Western Michigan next season to continue his college career with his brother, Hampton. But pretty cool to see the brothers out there on the ice together, Grant and Hampton Slukinsky. They won a national title together, and now they're both wearing Kings uniforms going through development camp. So pretty cool thing for the Slukinsky family. Also, Caleb Lawrence is huge. You look at the forwards out there and you try to see anything that catches your attention. And I didn't notice anyone really standing out as far as, quickness or anything, but the one guy that stood out because of his size was Caleb Lawrence. Everybody else is about 6 foot, 6'1", 6'2", 6'7". It's he's easy to notice out there, and very much a Christian Hellenius type of a player. Not sure that he's quite that rugged, a little more skill for him, but big kid, man, big kid, and a little bit intimidating. We'll see if he continues to develop, hopefully, for the LA Kings. And one other observation, just sharing what I saw out there. The forward group was coached up by Jarret Stoll, former LA King, Stanley Cup hero. And I have to say, I thought it was, I think cute is the only word to call it. His wife, Erin Andrews, the sportscaster for Fox, was there with their young son. And during practice, Jarret Stoll even waved and smiled at his wife and child, which I thought was, not a lot of guys do that kind of thing when they're working. It's like, I'm at work, I can't do that. He was very happy to see his wife and child there, and gave him a smile and a big wave during the middle of the practice. I thought that was actually kind of sweet. After the forwards wrapped up their drills, the defensemen came out, also led by a former King Stanley Cup winner in Matt Green. We did see top pick Henry Bustevich out there on the ice. He was laughing with his London teammate and now Kings teammate Jared Woolley, which is also very cool to see those two guys for the London Knights, now a part of the LA Kings as well. A bit harder to gauge watching the defensemen because a lot of the defensive drills were done without the puck. So, it's like when the forwards are doing their shooting and passing drills and stick handling drills, you can, it's easy to see that and see who's doing well, who's not doing well, or who stands out. And, with the defensemen, it's a lot of positioning, a lot of backward skating, a lot of, cutting off angles and things like that. So a little bit harder to kind of evaluate, but it was cool to see the Kings' number one pick, Henry Bustevich, out there for the first time in a Kings practice uniform going through it. And finally, the goalies. The Kings have some really good young netminders. Carter George is there. Hampton Slukinsky is there. And the new draft pick this year, Petteri Rempinen, also there. So I mentioned it the other day in one of our episodes, but the three starting goalies in the World Junior Championships this year, Carter George for Canada, Hampton Slukinsky for the U.S., and Petteri Rempinen for Finland, all now on the same sheet of ice, all playing for the same organization. So good young goaltending, a lot of it for the LA Kings. And I think that's actually, I know it's only for 4 days, but it's pretty great for these young players to know that if they score a goal off one of these guys, they've beaten one of the better goalies, in their age group in the world. So it's not easy to score and practice on these guys. When you get one past them, you've really, done something good, and that's good. That's challenging teammates. That's pushing them to be better, to beat, some good goaltenders. But it's encouraging to see the Kings with such good young goaltending in their organization. I would be willing to bet, and I haven't done the research, so this is an opinion, not a fact. I would be willing to bet the LA Kings are as good and as deep in young goaltendings as any team in the NHL. maybe the deepest team when it comes to young goalie prospects than any team in the NHL, which is pretty cool. As I said, though, unfortunately, could not stay for the scrimmage, but I will be back out there on Thursday. I will be checking out the scrimmage. I will be reporting on what I see as far as that goes. We'll be taking some pictures and some videos, just like I did for day one. And if you want to check out any of those pictures and videos with our extra coverage, send me an email at lakingsextra@gmail.com. That's lakingsextra@gmail.com. That's going to do it for this show. For you everydayers, those of you listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day. Tomorrow, we're going to have a complete recap of what the Kings do or don't do in free agency. It gets underway again, 9 a.m. LA time. Also this week, I think we're going to be joined by Eric Stevens of The Athletic, who covers the Kings for The Athletic. Had a brief chat with him on social media, and he it sounded like he's going to be able to join us, but it's not 100% yet. So hopefully we'll talk to Eric Stevens and be able to get his thoughts on the draft and on free agency and what's going on with the LA Kings. And then, of course, at the end of the week, we'll have our traditional fan feedback show. I'm guessing we'll have a lot of feedback. It's possible we split it into 2 shows again like we have the last couple of weeks because we've had so many emails, but we'll see. If you want to get an email in for the feedback show, the email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE, lockedoneddie@gmail.com. You're always welcome to post your thoughts if you're watching on YouTube in the comments section. Love for you to stay connected with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, at Locked On LA Kings. And we now have a Facebook page. I think it's working. Facebook.com/Locked On LA Kings. Facebook.com/Locked On LA Kings. I started it. I hope it's working. So if you're on Facebook and you want to stay connected to the show, there you go. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you as always for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you next time. And as always, go Kings, go.